Hello and welcome to today's grand incident. Touhou fan games, as I'm sure you've come to expect, often include many different characters from throughout the series. These inclusions range from NPCs to enemies, or even just small cameos, and the amount can be genre dependent. There's often a lot of these roles available, but when choosing a protagonist for your game, it's usually limited to one character. Reimu is the most common choice, as she is already the main character of the series, so she's easier to include in multiple scenarios involving the world of Touhou. Of course, Reimu isn't required, and something I've noticed from playing a good number of these fan games is that when your protagonist isn't Reimu, it's often because one or more of the game's core mechanics are tied directly to your chosen character's abilities. That's what I wanted to talk about today. A Touhou fan game that stars an unexpected character, and said character's abilities are absolutely pivotal to the game's overall design. The game, known as Kubinashi Recollection. The game was released on March 21st, 2021 by Doujin Circle Q Shokotoban, and was later published on Steam and Nintendo Switch in English on December 8th and 9th of the same year respectively. Kubinashi Recollection is a puzzle platformer starring the Rokurokubi Sekibanki, an unlikely hero for sure, but trust me, the choice of protagonist here will make sense in a bit. The story begins with Sekibanki wandering in what seems to be a dream. She encounters the ruler of dreams herself, Doremi Sweet, and explains to her that the residents of Gensokyo seem to be forgetting important memories. Doremi explains that memory fragments have been appearing and creating worlds within the dream world, and humbly requests Sekibanki's help in collecting them. There are 10 worlds in the game, and each one has 5 stages. As this is a puzzle game, you'll be required to use your head to get through it all. Literally. Sekibanki's main ability is being able to throw her heads. She can either throw them down to use as bounce pads, or shoot them as a projectile. The first ability is easily the most important one, as Sekibanki does not jump very high at all, so navigating a lot of the stages will require the additional height. These heads can be used an infinite amount of times too, as Sekibanki can pick them up and take them around with her. The other ability is much more situational. Sekibanki shoots her head, and it can be aimed left, right, or straight up. The head travels 4 tiles in length, and breaks certain blocks, however the head will disappear after use. Both heads are capable of interacting with the environment too, such as being able to collect keys and unlock key blocks. Now this is a puzzle game, so you're only given a certain number of heads per stage to use. However, there is an additional mode called 9-head mode that lets you start every stage with 9 heads. That brings us to the stages. As I mentioned, there are 50 different stages in the game, 10 worlds with 5 stages each, and the goal of each stage is to grab the red diamond. Multiple mechanics are introduced throughout the game, and to give a slightly exaggerated idea of this, the first mechanic is introduced in stage 1, and the last mechanic to be introduced in the game happens in stage 49. Now it's not like every single stage has something new, but there really is quite a number of new things introduced throughout. The earlier worlds start with the more common stuff, things like keys, key blocks, and color switches. Later worlds introduce and focus on more uncommon mechanics, and some worlds even have their own unique ones. An example of an uncommon mechanic would be the portals, which are mostly uncommon due to a late introduction. They work exactly as you'd expect, you enter one and come out the other, but with the same height as a head bounce. There aren't too many unique examples, but I'd say the most notable one are the beat blocks present in the majority of World 6. Aside from those few unique instances, every new mechanic becomes a potential aspect of a later stage's puzzle. There's a lot of mixing and matching. Now with how many different things show up, it sounds like putting a bunch of them together for one level would be overwhelming. But the thing is, every new addition to the game can be explained entirely in a single sentence. What I mean by that exactly is everything is easy to understand, and by the end of the stage a mechanic is introduced in, you'll very likely have a complete understanding as to how it works. That the game is able to constantly incorporate new things to it throughout is incredibly impressive. But the part I find the most amazing is that despite this variety, none of these new additions ever overshadow the main mechanic of using Sekibanki's heads. To wrap up, whenever you finish the 5th stage in a world, you'll be treated to a memory of Sekibanki, or some other character entirely. You can often guess who's going to be involved in these memories based on the theme of the world. I'd say that covers the main stuff, but this game features quite a few different extras for completionists. Every stage has a bonus objective of collecting a puzzle piece. These unlock additional costumes, and provide an extra challenge to the stage. The piece only counts as collected if you finish the stage with it, and I should mention that these pieces are grabbable with heads, similarly to keys. You can move the camera around to find where the piece is and plan a route. It sounds simple, but you'd be surprised how difficult some of these pieces are to grab, while also finishing the stage. Another extra goal is to complete the stage as fast as you can. When you grab a memory fragment, you'll be given a grade based on your speed of completion. represented with a colored emblem. C rank is bronze, and S rank is platinum. The expression of the head on each medal is different too, which is a neat touch. These ranks are almost fully related to only achievements, but you do get a special reward for getting S rank in every stage. I'm not going to tell you what that reward is, but I will say, it's pretty sweet. I mentioned them a bit before, so let me explain them properly. There's a number of different costumes for Sekibanki to wear, and the majority of them are unlocked by collecting a certain number of puzzle pieces, or by a certain number of achievements. My personal favorite is the one that has Shanghai hanging off of Sekibanki's face. The achievements are viewable in-game. Some of them are secret though, so you might have to look up what exactly they are, assuming you're going for a 100% playthrough. One last thing I'd like to mention about these extras is there's a small info page on the characters who appear throughout the game, be it in memory or person, that gives a little info on them, and a spot to rewatch the memories you've gathered. That last bit is expected, but I'm bringing it up because once you beat the game, there is a bonus scene unlocked that can only be viewed in there. That about covers the basics of what to expect from the gameplay, with 50 stages to go through, a strong core mechanic in Sekibanki's head, as well as multiple new elements added throughout, and a few bonuses for completionists to incentivize going for every puzzle piece and trying to get some fast times. I'm not quite done though, as I wanted to talk a bit about the game's more advanced techniques. I mentioned earlier that Sekibanki can pick up any of the heads she throws down to use again, but something I didn't mention is you can actually do the same in midair. With a well-timed toss and proper movement, Sekibanki can land on her head while airborne, resulting in a higher bounce. This can also be done with springs, and after a bounce, so long as you have heads to throw, you can continue to ascend. Now I'm sure you can complete the game normally without ever doing this, but I had multiple instances where I couldn't figure out how to collect a puzzle piece and finish a level without it. To be fair though, I had learned about the technique by World 2, so I was making use of it pretty early on. Now, why the heck would I learn about and do something like this so early in the game? Well, it's because of those time ranks. S ranks are hard to obtain, and the required time on them has me convinced the dev knew about this technique and expected the player to make use of them. At least, that seems to be the case for the single boost jump, as the A rank for 6-1 is around 39 seconds, and I beat it like so in under 15. I have no idea if making use of that single boost jump is the same expectation for the puzzle pieces, but I'm leaning more so on yes. Now there is another harder technique in the game that the dev definitely didn't intend the player to use for S ranks. And honestly, I wouldn't recommend doing this one until you've at least finished the main game. The move in question is the ability to grab the object you're bouncing on, while also getting the bounce. It's some genuine troll physics. I'm pretty sure it's a 1-frame window to grab something you've bounced on, but I'm unsure. This technique also extends to the portals, and honestly, without the ability to do this, I don't think I would have gotten all 50 S ranks. This is rather difficult to do, and it breaks the flow of a lot of stages, which is why I don't recommend bothering with it until you finish the game and are interested in 100%. I doubt a lot of people are going to try this in every stage. Most probably wouldn't even figure out you could do it, and I wonder what the dev thinks about this technique in general. I actually appreciate that it's left in at all, as these types of things often get removed in patches. I personally think it's fine for something like this to exist in a single-player game, since you should be free to play as you want. But regardless of my opinion on it, it's not going anywhere anyway. If frame-tight tricks add to your experience, then that's great. If not, then that's okay too. At the end of the day, how you play this game is up to you, and all anyone can hope for is that by the end of your playthrough, you've enjoyed all the things it had to offer. Kubinashi Recollection is quite a fantastic game. To reiterate, it's got a lot of variety that isn't overbearing, and it never overshadows Sekibanki and her specific abilities. There's plenty to do in it should you choose to do so, but even if you don't want to go full completionist, it's still well worth the play. The art in the game is great. Both the sprite work and the portraits are adorable, as well as the CGs for the memories and cutscenes. Speaking of those, they're quite heartwarming. I enjoy the vibe of them immensely, from funny to feel good. They're a nice reward and break after every 5 stages. Then there's the music. It's all incredible, and ranges from relaxed to fast-paced. One of the coolest aspects to it is that each world has 2 variations. One that plays for the first 3 stages, and one that plays for the last 2. It's the kind of music that makes you not mind spending a lot of time in a level, which is great considering the bonus objectives can be quite time-consuming. I honestly have very few issues with this game as a whole, but I do have a few with some specific things. The first is the mochi block. It can expand on and absorb Sekibanki, forcing a restart. Portals don't seem to function properly on it either. Learned that one the hard way. Another is with the bonus room. There's a room that opens up after beating the game that you can enter passwords for. Inputting character names gives results, but they aren't translated. It's more about the secret stages. There are 7 stages accessible through a code here, And while me saying that is definitely a spoiler, I don't know how you're expected to find them. Thing is that just playing one of these levels is an achievement, so it's required for 100%. Time and puzzle pieces aren't tracked for these in the records, but they do exist if you want to do them. The music room seems to hint at their existence, since some of the stages have unique tracks, but I don't think they're unlocked until you hear them in-game. And the music room is untranslated, so I have no idea if there's anything helpful actually in there. Lastly, a personal gripe with the speedrun aspect. The intended way to get S ranks requires some serious precision, and as I said, I ended up using those frame-type jumps to obtain some of them. Not a good combination, but that's my fault, not the game's. My main issue is that there's no real indication that what you're doing is correct. The difference in ranks is a few seconds, and you won't know what rank you got until you finish. Going fast and being precise, only to end up with a gold, can be frustrating, as you have no idea how much time you need to save to nudge into platinum. A little indicator next to the time on what rank you're currently on pace for would be a small, but very helpful thing. I actually have another desire for something to be added, and it's not due to a negative. With how many different elements are at this game's disposal, it's kind of a perfect setup for a level editor. I'm not the type to dive into such a mode myself, but I really do think it's a missed opportunity, given the array of mechanics and bouncing techniques that can be used throughout the game. Regarding the circle, Kyushokotoban, they are still active to this day. Kubinashi Recollection is their first full game, with the majority of their published work being music. The group has made a handful of minigames too, but it seems like their main focus is on music. I don't know what they're planning for their next game project, and if you want to stay up to date on that yourself, the group's founding and only member, Peridot, is active on social media. I'm looking forward to the next game announcement myself, and I'll enjoy the art and music they post while I wait. With all that said, time for the rating. Kubinashi Recollection is without a doubt a ranked Chirno of a game. Let me explain why. The world themes and music are all Toho based, but there really isn't anything you need to know to just enjoy the aesthetic, or the music. Sekibanki and Doremi are the main characters you really even see in the game, with the other Toho characters who show up being more or less cameos as a part of the end-of-world memories, all of which are skippable without affecting the gameplay. Some of the memories related to Sekibanki herself are nice if you're unfamiliar with her, but for the others, you might just be confused as to what is happening. Sekibanki isn't exactly a spotlight character for the series herself though, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone only found out this was a Toho fan game because someone told them, or they got through World 3 and saw Chirno. Would you agree or disagree? Let me know what you think. I mentioned at the beginning of this video how when a protagonist for a Toho fan game is chosen that isn't Reimu, it's due to a certain character's abilities being a better fit. A good example of this is with Luna Knights. The game stars Sakuya, and the game is designed around the ability to manipulate the speed of time. Now obviously a game being designed around a core mechanic isn't a revelation, but my point is more so that when working with established characters, it's important to use the ones who best fit the design, instead of forcing another into it. Kubinashi Recollection's core mechanic are those bouncy heads. While they don't necessarily have to be heads, Sekibanki is a character who can believably produce them based on what is known about her, and the dev added elements to those abilities that work for the gameplay, while remaining in the realm of possibility for said character. One look at the dev's social media and it becomes pretty clear that Sekibanki was going to be the star of this game no matter what, and I think he chose a great mechanic to go with her inclusion. I mean, could you imagine the same game but with Reimu? I expect that whatever comes next from this circle will feature Sekibanki no matter what, and I wonder what the dev will do to further expand on her capabilities. I look forward to whatever the future holds for the head-throwing sass master, and I hope that next time, she brings her friends along for the ride. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you during the next incident.